For over 90% of human history, there was no escape from total darkness. No lights, no switches, no glowing screens to chase the shadows away. Just this. The sun disappears behind the horizon. Within minutes, the world around you turns almost completely black. No streetlights, no electricity, no windows glowing in the distance. Only the faint light of the moon and a sky full of stars remain above you. Every sound suddenly feels louder. A branch snaps in the forest. A dog barks somewhere far away. You freeze. Because once darkness arrived in the ancient world, people knew that anything could be hiding in it. For thousands of years, nighttime wasn't simply the end of the day. It was a completely different world. A world filled with fear, mystery, superstition, secret meetings, and dangerous journeys. But also, surprisingly, moments of peace that modern humans have almost forgotten how to feel. So what really happened after sunset thousands of years ago? Did everyone just go to sleep? How did they see without electricity? And why did so many ancient people wake up on purpose? In the dead of night. For reasons that would sound insane to us today, tonight we're traveling back thousands of years to answer one question. What did ancient people really do during the night? Today, real darkness is almost impossible to find. Even at midnight, our cities glow brighter than most places did during the daytime, thousands of years ago. Streetlights stretch for miles. Headlights sweep across highways. Buildings shine with thousands of electric bulbs. Even our phones make sure that darkness is never truly dark. Now imagine living before any of that existed. When the sun went down, the entire world changed. Darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It became its own environment, with its own rules and its own dangers. Ancient people tracked the sun's movement every single day because their survival depended on it. Most work had to be finished before sunset. Farmers rushed to bring their animals home. Children were called inside. Merchants shut their stalls. Travelers searched desperately for shelter before the light disappeared completely. Because once darkness covered the land, everything became unpredictable. A journey that was simple in daylight could turn deadly after sunset. Roads vanished into shadow. Forests became impossible to navigate. Even paths people had walked 100 times suddenly looked like somewhere else entirely. Here's something most people don't realize. Without artificial light, human eyesight is far more limited than we assume. Past just a few meters, almost everything dissolves into darkness. This is exactly why entire civilizations built their lives around the sun. It wasn't just a source of light. It was their clock, their calendar, and in many ways their protector. When it disappeared, life itself slowed to a crawl. But contrary to what most people imagine, the night wasn't empty. It was just different. And what happened in those hours after sunset is stranger and more human than you might expect. As darkness spread across ancient villages and cities, small points of light began to appear, one by one. Tiny flames flickered behind doorways, oil lamps lit up narrow streets, torches burned near the city gates. The smell of smoke drifted through the evening air. For wealthy families, olive oil lamps created a warm, golden glow inside the home. Poorer families relied on animal fat or simple candles made from wax. And here's the thing. These lights were expensive. Every drop of oil mattered. Every candle had real value. Unlike today, you couldn't just leave a light burning all night. It would have been an unthinkable waste. So instead, families gathered into a single room. They talked. They shared stories. They mended clothes and prepared food for the next day. Grandparents told legends passed down for generations, and children listened closely, memorizing every word. This is actually how most of the world's oldest myths survived for thousands of years. History wasn't written first. It was spoken, passed from one voice to the next under the soft, flickering light of a single flame. But while families huddled together indoors, just beyond their small circles of light, the darkness kept growing deeper. And somewhere out there, in that deeper darkness, something strange was about to happen. Something almost no one alive today has ever experienced. Because not everyone in the ancient world slept straight through the night. In fact, one nighttime ritual was so common across entire cultures that historians now consider it one of the most overlooked parts of daily life before the industrial era. People would fall asleep shortly after dark, wake up in the middle of the night for an hour or more, and then go back to sleep until dawn. Historians call it segmented sleep, or simply the two sleeps. The first sleep usually began just a couple of hours after sunset. People would drift off not long after finishing dinner, often before what we would now call a normal bedtime. Then, somewhere around midnight, they would simply wake up. Not from a nightmare, not from noise. Their bodies would just naturally surface from sleep, wide awake, in the middle of the night. And this wasn't seen as a problem. It was expected. During that strange waking hour in the deepest part of the night, people didn't panic and didn't try to force themselves back to sleep. They prayed. They talked quietly with a spouse, discussing the day or planning the one ahead. Some tended to small chores by candlelight, mending a tool or checking on animals. Others simply lay in the dark, thinking, in a state some historians compare to a light meditation. Married couples often used this quiet hour for intimacy, precisely because it was one of the only times in the day when the household was silent and no one was watching. Then, after an hour or two, people would drift back into what was called second sleep, which lasted until dawn. This pattern shows up again and again in old letters, court records, and medical texts from medieval Europe. Physicians of the time even wrote about which activities were best suited to the space between the two sleeps, treating it as a normal, structured part of the day, not a disruption to it. So what happened? Why don't we sleep this way anymore? The answer, most historians agree, is artificial light. As candles, oil lamps, and eventually electric lighting became cheaper and more common, nights grew brighter, bedtimes grew later, and the natural gap between two sleep cycles began to disappear. Within a few generations, an entire sleeping pattern that had existed for thousands of years simply vanished, and today, almost no one even remembers that it once existed at all. But that quiet hour of segmented sleep wasn't peaceful for everyone. Because for many ancient civilizations, midnight wasn't just quiet. It was dangerous. It was the hour when spirits were said to walk, when evil was believed to be at its strongest, when the boundary between the world of the living and whatever lay beyond it felt at its thinnest. And that fear didn't come from nowhere. Think about what darkness actually does to the human mind. With no visual information to process, the brain begins filling in the blanks. A shifting shadow becomes a shape. A gust of wind becomes a whisper. The rustle of leaves becomes footsteps, following just a little too closely. Ancient people didn't have modern explanations for these sensations, so they created their own. And almost every civilization on Earth developed some version of the same belief, that the night belonged to something other than the living. In ancient Rome, people believed that the hours after midnight were haunted by restless spirits called lemures, wandering souls of the dead who had not been properly honored and who returned at night to torment the living. An entire festival, called the Lemuria, existed just to appease them, involving rituals performed at midnight, using black beans thrown over the shoulder while reciting specific words. Believed to drive the spirits away. In parts of ancient China, the night was divided into 2-hour watches, each guarded against different kinds of misfortune. The deepest hour of the night, roughly between 11 at night and 1 in the morning, was considered the most yin, the most associated with cold, darkness, and spiritual energy. It was considered unwise to travel alone during this time, and even less wise to speak the names of the dead. In medieval Europe, entire villages believed that supernatural creatures only came out after dark. Witches were said to gather at midnight,